Blog Talk Radio.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
In Dallas, Texas, 3 shots were fired at President Kennedy's motorcade in downtown Dallas. The first reports say that President Kennedy has been seriously wounded by this shooting.
It is a big idea, a new world order.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
Either you are with us or you are with the terrorists.
But I also believe that a lot of gun owners would agree that AK-47s belong in the hands of soldiers, not in the hands of criminals.
Okay, everybody, how you doing tonight? Joseph Gibson podcasting from Greensboro, North Carolina tonight. Hopefully we'll keep a lot of the trolls out and a lot of the nonsense out, but this is going to be a very educational podcast. We're going to bring Mr. Ken Lewis from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California, onto the podcast here in a moment. I'm lining up other callers here, so we will be live in about 2 minutes, okay? And then we'll do my short intro, and then we'll bring Mr. Ken Lewis on from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California. Biblical scholar, has a lot to say. I wanted to promote his website here on the show. And we're going to talk about some very important topics here tonight. So we'll be back here in about 2 minutes. I got some other calls here to line up for the show, and reminders for people. But Ken Lewis from Imperial Beach, San Diego, in about 2 minutes will be live with us. So this is going to be a very powerful show. And the phone number is 657-383-0616, or you can log into the chat room, blogtalkradio.com/Joseph Gibson. We'll be live in about 2 minutes. Just hang on tight.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war. But there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better rev than death, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material compositions. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
Okay, everybody, Joseph Gibson, podcasting live from Greensboro, North Carolina tonight. Ken Lewis is our special guest here tonight from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California. I'm going to connect him in a minute. But a lot of people need to understand we're in a spiritual war here. We see what's happening across our country. We're in a civil war, basically. It's not a war where we're fighting with guns or attacking each other with guns like we did in the 1800s, 1862, 63, 64, 65. We're in a spiritual war. And we're going to answer a lot of questions here tonight. Now, I know we had Dr. Kaba on the show, our last show there, and I don't know where my co-host is here tonight. She's a no-show. I don't know what her agenda is or what she's trying to do or why she's a no-show. I sent her a text telling her we're doing a show tonight. And we're going to answer these questions here tonight. When we die, we don't become a big ball of energy and go to the moon and go to the sun, okay? And the black man isn't the original man that walked the earth, okay? And we're gonna prove that here tonight. And the European invaders did not invade America and take away the land from the indigenous people, okay? All right, we're going to go to history. We're going to talk about history here tonight, true history. And if you disagree, don't come on here and spew nonsense, something you saw on YouTube or a book you read, and start talking about your nonsense. You can ask the guest here tonight a question if you want to. We'll allow the guest to answer questions, and he will answer. But I'm going to allow him to have an intro, and he's going to basically explain. He and I talked privately on the show. And I said, look, my show, I had this Dr. Kaba on, which Dr. Kaba was very well-spoken, and he answered questions. I can't say the same for Jane Elliott. Obviously, she's a very angry white woman that hates her race and thinks that black fragility and doesn't understand the difference between white privilege and black fragility, and we can get into that nonsense if you want to tonight, okay? But the fact of the matter is that we're in a spiritual war in this country right now. And look, we all know I preach against a corporation. I understand the United States is a corporation. We've been over this a million times on this show. I understand the Federal Reserve System. Been over that a million times. I've called corporations. I've called businesses on this show and exposed it for you, but you've taken that information and not used it wisely. Go back in the archive and listen. I'm getting on point here tonight. And look, if you disagree with this guest, that's fine, but don't come with your opinions. Come with facts. Come with facts, because my guest tonight is going to bring facts, documentary facts. All right? So I'm going to connect Mr. Lewis, and then we'll take live callers. And I know there's some people already waiting on hold that want to speak. And we're going to allow you to speak, but you're going to have to turn off your dumb phones, turn off Facebook for a little while, Fraud Book, turn off Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and you're going to have to listen to the show and listen to the guests for a little while. And then I will connect you uncensored, unscreened, live. But my finger is on the mute button very quickly tonight. We're not going to attack each other. We can ask questions, and we can have a conversation together on this platform. That's the way this platform is going to run from this point on and what we have been doing. Now we're going to talk facts, historical facts, doctrinal facts, inspirational facts. And that's what Mr. Lewis is going to bring for us here tonight. And he and I spoke, like I said previously, about some of these shows that I've been doing here, and a lot of it has been instrumental in a positive way, but there's been a lot of negativity on the show also. So we're going to talk facts here tonight. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, but your opinion is not a factual foundation on the way things are and the way things are going to be in the future. And there's only one God, and that is through the Lord Jesus Christ. There's only one way to the Father, and that's through the Lord Jesus Christ. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. Simple as that. And like Donald Trump did say, and I give him credit, if you don't like America, you don't like our laws, get out. Go someplace else. See how far you get. If you hate America and what it stands for, and you hate our Constitution so much, go someplace else. Simple as that. Go. There's planes that leave this country every single day. Get on one. There's people willing to pay for your ticket. Go. We can get to the Tower of Babel. We can talk about history, human government. We can get into all that tonight. If you don't like the way things are and you hate America so much and you hate the red, white, and blue, look, I disagree with America. I disagree with the corporation. I understand America has done a lot of wrongful things. But the Constitution is the second greatest document other than the King James Bible ever written. Simple as that. The Constitution says that we all have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I understand the founders, the founders owned slaves. Where were black people back then? Blah, blah, blah. Well, where were the Jews back then? Where were the Jews in 1944? They were in concentration camps. Where were the Christians 2,000 years ago in the Roman Empire? They were being enslaved. Why were the Egyptians enslaving Jews? We can argue about all the nonsense all you want. But the fact of the matter is there's a plan, and it's God's plan, and he already knows what man's going to do. And that's why I'm bringing on a biblical scholar here tonight, and I'm going to connect him right now, and he's going to come on, and then we're going to take live callers. So turn off your dumb book phones and your Chromie books and everything else, and listen to someone who knows, who's lived a life, who's studied manuscripts, who understands history. Just listen. Just listen for a little bit. If you have a question for him, he'll be willing to answer your question. But we're not going to allow attacking each other here on this podcast. We're not going to allow it any longer. Mr. Lewis from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California, I'm going to connect you. I see you've been waiting for 24 minutes. Thank you for calling earlier. Mr. Ken Lewis, how you doing out there in Imperial Beach, San Diego, California? The floor is yours for the next 20 minutes. Go ahead.
Amen. Okay. Yeah, it's Lewis Brackett. I don't know where you got the Ken from, but that's okay. Anyway, I've lived out here in San Diego since 1975, and I've been in Imperial Beach here for quite a while, and I have to say that if there's any place where Satan's throne is, I think it is here. I mean, the oppression, the demonic oppression, and whatever this is horribly strong, as I talked to Brother Joe earlier today. But anyway, on the subject, I'd like to quote kind of sort of from a book by Dave Hunt called Peace, Prosperity, and the Coming Holocaust. I practically read the covers off that. It's one of the most fascinating things I've ever read. I think it's be appropriate to kind of set the stage of the last 100 years of how we got, about 5 minutes to set the stage of how we got here. And then I'll go over to the New Age and the Spiritism from a lady named Constance Cumby, wrote a great book, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, and quote a little bit from that. However, from one of the pages of my website, German Enlightenment and the Moral Confusion. Up until the 19th century, Central Europe's morality still had the Christian basis of Martin Luther. In the 19th century, it became fashionable to question this basis of society. After all, the elite had always done pretty much whatever they wanted. Sadly, the church was still a pillar of the state, rather than being concerned with the salvation of souls. It was said that we can have morality without God. After all, we're a Christian nation. However, the basis of morality and virtue comes from the lawgivers, Moses and Jesus. Remove their influence, and you start to rationalize away basic moral truth. This does not happen suddenly, but over a period of time. Each generation is more perverse than the last until you finally reach total social and moral depravity. The prime movers, among others, of this descent into depravity were Darwin, Freud, and Marx. Darwin and Freud gave man a pseudo-scientific rationale to reject God, showing that man was only an animal. Marx showed how this clever animal should be a depraved, ravenous beast, devouring society with its teeth. It's not for nothing that the mantra of Lenin's Communist Party was illuminated by the creed, quote, "The nature of mass terror must be encouraged," unquote. Lenin maintained that previous revolutions had not been successful because they had not killed enough people. Later, National Socialism was founded on this premise that the state and the leader was God, that there were no rights other than were convenient for the state. This descent into depravity had been achieved. In the 19th century, the basis for morality had been driven out of society. In the 20th century, any whim of a leader was a divine word. As the religious basis of the Nazi elite was militant Hinduism, millions of people were not being killed, maimed, or tortured. These useless and inconvenient cattle, animals as Darwin and Freud insisted, were merely being sent on to the next incarnation where they might even appear as something useful. Today's elite look upon us in the same Darwinian light. As Hitler purged his society of unwanted genetic misfits, races, and creeds, so today's elite seek to reduce this more or less human herd of cattle down to a sustainable level the earth can support, the minimum number of serfs needed to service them as kings and nobility in the new feudal order. We go to Hegel. Along with the twisted and perverse mantra of Darwin, Freud, and Marx, we have the activist social gospel of another 19th century dim bulb, Hegel. His mantra has totally captivated the intellectual elite. Basically, he taught that only great chaos can bring about great change. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis was his mantra. 2 world wars were encouraged, caused to subvert decent government and society towards their unholy grail of a new world order. The Nazi military was rebuilt, and later Soviet threat was kept in power by their constant funding. Today, the radical, bloodthirsty Muslims are encouraged, armed, and fed by the same twisted, perverse theology that only maximum chaos can achieve the desired new world order. Explaining Hegel's mantra, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, for example, thesis is a KGB Bible, the truth. Antithesis is an opinion contrary to God's word, a lie. In Hegel's discipline, a group argues about both positions, comes up with a synthesis, a compromise, which is now the new truth. And of course, this new truth is a lie from the pit of hell. Then someone challenges this new truth, thesis, with an even more far-out heretical position, antithesis, resulting in a far bolder synthesis, delusional position, and heresy. I now go on to the demonic deception and the myth of the God-man. People thinking that Nazism was only a political movement are uninformed. The Nazis followed ancient meditation, yoga, seeking spirit guides, demonic powers, channeling Hinduism's ascended masters, fallen angels, who gave them the supernatural ability to delude masses of people. All this is today called the New Spiritualism, the New Age movement, seeking godhood in the same way as do the Hindus. Indeed, the swastika is the most ancient and holy Hindu religious symbol. Even today, Hitler is still revered in India as a Mahatma or holy man. Hitler was totally possessed by these demonic masters. He would see the future in dreams and visions and came to totally rely on them. When he gave speeches, he was channeling these great ascended masters, who were in reality demons or fallen angels. In some instances, perhaps Satan himself. However, even Satan is often wrong, which caused Hitler to begin World War II 5 years before Germany was ready. The world elite today follow many of the same occult practices, reenacting ancient pagan rituals. The Bohemian Groove rituals of today are the worship of ancient pagan gods. The Masons and Rosicrucian elite, uniting in the Golden Dawn Society, also worship the same pagan deities and seek out the same ascended masters, demonic spirits, fallen angels, as did the Nazis. In the 19th century, the elite European occult society was a Gesellschaft, I can't even pronounce that, but anyway. The society melded into the Nazi Party in the early 20th century. This pagan Germany, purged of all non-Aryan blood, would establish a new world order, with Hitler as a New Age messiah, an empire lasting 1,000 years. This Aryan blood mystique is totally a militant Hindu origin. The Viril Society in India, with the swastika symbols, has the same occult purpose, encouraging militant Hinduism and the cleansing of India from all outside religious pollution. The leaders of the Viril Society in Germany were Karl Hasshofer and Dietrich Eckart, who initiated Hitler and other Nazi elite into Theophilus Belevsky's, having trouble pronouncing stuff tonight, secret doctrine. Alice Bailey also expanded on this base of evil. For the last generation, occultist Benjamin Creme has been promoting this occult messiah myth at the United Nations with his pet messiah called Maitreya. Does this all sound familiar? It should. All this today is the basis of today's new spiritualism, New Age movement, ancient Hindu paganism, gurus who encourage people to seek out their own inner godhood. As Jean Michael Eckberg noted, quote, those who induced Germany to embrace a swastika are not dead. They are still among us, just as they have been in every era, and doubtless will continue to be until apocalypse. National Socialism was for them but a means, and Hitler was but an instrument. That undertaking failed. What they, the demonic spirits and fallen angels, are now trying to do is to revive the myth by other means. Can we remember President George Bush calling for a new world order that will undoubtedly be shared by the Fourth Reich's Antichrist? All this reminds me of the Bible, Acts 4:25, who by the mouth of thy servant David has said, why did the heathen rage and the people imagine vain things? The kings of the earth stood up, and the rulers were gathered together against the Lord and against his Christ. So that gives you a basic understanding of what in the world has really been going on. It is nothing but the ancient secret mystery religions repackaged as spiritualism, as spiritism, and all kinds of mental delusion for this our present age. I'm not going to quote a little bit from Constance Cumby's book, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow, about this spiritism, about this New Age movement. In Chapter 4, a vast organizational network today, the New Age movement received a modern start in 1875 with the founding of the Theosophical Society by Helena Petrovna Blavatsky. A basic teaching of this organization was all world religions had common truths that transcended potential differences. Strongly profound in the theory of evolution, they also believe in the existence of masters who were either spirit beings or fortunate men more highly evolved than the common herd. This was a doctrine which was to have substantial impact on the development of Hitler's Nazism several decades later. She worked on a telepathic communication writing as a fulcrum for the masters, demonic masters, fallen angels, starting in 1867 and continuing until death in 1891. Achieving illumination or enlightenment was one of these New Age goals, and that meant more than mere light bulbs to at least one of their more famous initiates, Thomas Alva Edison, who joined the organization and signed the Pledge of Secrecy in 1878. Through this Theosophical Society.
And Mr. Lewis, real quick, not to interrupt you, but I just want to let people know that are calling in, you can ask Mr. Lewis questions here as soon as he's done. He's got about 8 to 10 more minutes, maybe a little bit more.
Right.
And you can ask questions, and we can talk about this energy thing and who the original man was and stuff like that. I just want to interject for callers out there. I know they're waiting on the line. You will be heard. You'll be allowed to ask questions. So go ahead, Mr. Lewis. Continue. I'm sorry.
Right. The Christians, and what this person, the satanic person, said, the Christians, the scientists, must be made to respect their Indian betters. The wisdom of India, her philosophy and achievement must be made known in Europe and America, that the English made to respect the natives of India and Tibet more than they do. In other words, to totally ban and eliminate Christianity. The theology, I'm terrible at pronouncing today. What they said was they opposed the materialism of science and every form of dogma theology, especially the Christian, which the chiefs of the society regard in particular pernicious to make known among Western nations and the long-suppressed tracts about Oriental religious philosophies and their ethics, chronology, esotericism, symbolism, to counteract as far as possible the efforts of missionaries to delude the so-called heathen and pagans as to the real origin and sigmas of Christianity and the practical truth. The whole point of Spiritism in this new age is to attack and destroy the Christian faith by all kinds of nonsense. To accept the gods of the so-called monotheistic religions, gods created by man in his own image and likeness, a blasphemous and sorry caricature of the ever unknowable. This is an attitude that continues to prevail throughout the New Age movement. Everything is good except Orthodox monotheistic religion, Judaizing, Christianity. So what they do is they try to draw their inspiration from spirits or elements or elementals, from fallen angels or demonic forces. And the leader of this theostical society believed they were under the direct supervision of adepts and initiates belonging to the great branch of the Great White Brotherhood, following written orders from these spirit beings. They just accept any writing, anything that is contrary to God is something that is divine, and anything from the Bible is something that is profane. And of course, these demonic messages told him to keep the society in reach of secret until it was too late for man to understand what was really happening, what was really going on. Now, what we have is a demonic hierarchy has been established in this country and elsewhere in the world, where anything that's biblical, anything of God, is immediately considered to be evil or profane. And Christianity is being attacked all over the world because it is the only work, and the Bible is the only work written by God. There are many other books that have been written by all kinds of occult means, but every single one of them is to draw man away from God and to bring man into a spiritual relationship with the forces of darkness. You remember the Star Wars silliness that in this spirituality there's both good and evil. In reality, it is all evil because it draws man away from basic truth that there is a divine creator to whom he or she is accountable. And that is one of the greatest lies. Another thing, I'll close my comment with this one particular thing. Just visualize a large meadow, a large field, and there was a fence growing across the middle of the field. God's people were on one side of the fence. The devil's people were on the other side of the fence. Well, God came to get his people. Then the devil came to get his people, but there was somebody that was sitting on the fence, and he said, well, I don't have to believe either way, but just before sunset, the devil came back and says, hey, you're going with me. What do you mean? I'm on the fence. Hey, the fence belongs to me too, and he dragged the guy kicking and screaming down into hell. So the point is, if you don't make a choice, you've already made a choice. It's man's nature nowadays to be rebellious and self-concerned and that nothing is more important than self. But in reality, if you don't make a choice for God, you've already made a choice for eternal hellfire. And that is an eternal choice. Brother Joe.
Yeah, well, Mr. Lewis, we spoke, a lot of people have come on and said, when we die, we all know we're going to die one day, whether or not you're 48 years old, 68 years old, 75 years old. And a lot of people say, well, when you die, you become energy. And you're either a positive energy or a negative energy. And then like I said, I have had previous guests on the show. I don't know where my co-host is here tonight. She's disappeared. I guess I'm not bringing her agenda forward here that she wanted, maybe. But like I said, she's welcome to call in. But we're trying to bring a little bit of knowledge here, and a lot of people say, well, before you answer that, people say, well, Mother Earth is the answer. The Earth has its own resources, and we all should have a right to Mother Earth's resources. And then some other calls in the previous week said that the Europeans are invaders, and the original people that owned America, therefore the Europeans are illegal immigrants, and what Trump is doing to the people on the border is wrong, and it's racist, and the original people that belong here are the Indians and the indigenous people that are the original beings that belong on the continent of America or North America. Well, what do you have to say about that?
Well, first of all, I would like to go back to the spiritualism and to the authentication. If the President of the United States picked up a telephone, dialed a missile base, says, launch the missiles, what is he going to ask? What's the guy there? He said, Mr. President, I need your authenticator. Got to prove it's you, okay? In the very same way, the Bible has an amazing and unique authenticator. No other religious books do. 1/3 of the Bible is an authentication to the other 2/3. 1/3 of the Bible is future telling, which no other religious book does. And the whole history of mankind has been predicted in advance by the prophetic word in the Bible. None of what is happening today surprises a Christian in one little bit, because every bit of that was prophesied. Way back before Christ was born, the prophecies gave more than 400 identifiers to tell who the Christ was, and only 10 authenticators of who the Christ was. The chances of one person fulfilling that would be the same if you scattered a foot deep pile of silver dollars all over the state of Texas, with only one silver dollar was the right one. That's only 10. But there were 400 authenticators that Christ fulfilled, in his heritage, in his life, in his death, in his resurrection.
All right, who was Christ? Was Christ a Jew? Was he a black man? Well, I mean, because a lot of people have come on this show and said, look, the original man was a black man, and the Bible's a big fat lie, and therefore, I get a lot of people from the matriarch that come onto the show, the Ethiopian matriarch, and I know a lot of them are on this program right now. I sent them messages saying, hey, I'm going to bring on a Bible scholar right now, and they all ran away, and because I didn't bring on Jane Elliott and everyone else who says, or Dr. Kaba, who says the black man is the original man, and Jesus is a big fat lie, and Jesus and the original person on earth, the original being on earth, and we all spawned from a black man, and the Ethiopian Empire is the original true land of our Creator, or Mother Earth. How do you explain that in biblical senses, and how can you disprove what they're saying?
Okay. Well, Jesus, we have the genealogy of Jesus, both his mother's genealogy, I think it's what in Luke, and then his father's genealogy in Matthew. And that's, by the way, why there are two different genealogies. But the thing is, we know, all the way back to Abraham, who his people were and are. There are no, there's no possibility of any other thing. Now in Jesus' heritage, there may well have been various colored people, We think there may well have been. The thing is, though, he wasn't white. He didn't have blonde hair. He looked like the ordinary Middle Eastern Jew. You know, it does today, a very swarthy Mediterranean type complexion. And it said he was very ordinary looking. There was nothing about him that was special in any way except who he was. And he said he was almost ugly in his features. You know, it was so plain and ordinary. But his message, of course, was anything but ordinary, because you know he was sent here. God sent here as a man, as it says, you know, throughout the Bible, especially in the first few verses of John. God became man and became flesh, so God could talk to us and explain himself more clearly, that we would know who and what he is.
Well, that brings me, not to interrupt you, but then that brings me to, well, men wrote that book. Men wrote the Bible. How do we know it's true? How do we know the Bible, the King James Bible, is the true Word of God? How do we know that today? How can we explain to the listeners out there that the King James Bible is the true Word of God and it's not something else? How do we know?
Authenticators, as I just partially explained, the Bible is the only religious book that is future telling. The future telling in the Bible, 1/3 of the Bible is future telling. That future telling, fulfilled future telling, is an authenticator that everything else is true. For example, the book of Daniel, Daniel gives this amazing prophecy telling exactly the very month, the year, and the day when Messiah would appear, and other things. But to authenticate that, the last half of the book of Daniel is a blow-by-blow description of every single thing that happened in the Greek-Roman world of that time. And he also gave the whole list of the empires that would come, the Babylon, followed by the Media-Persia, followed by the Greek, and followed by the Rome. When Alexander the Great came to Jerusalem, the priest went out and said, "Look, you're right here in the Bible. Hundreds of years ago, the prophet said that the leader of Greece would come and overthrow the whole world and create a great empire, and you're the man." And Alexander was so astonished. He says, "Wow." And he worshipped God, the God of Israel, because he says, "Wow, that's perfect. I don't know how, but you're the God of wonders." And Nebuchadnezzar, when he saw the 3 Hebrew young men being burned alive in the fire, but there was no smoke on them, and they were perfectly fine. It says, "Who is that is in there with them?"
Original birthright? Does this not go back to the original birthright between Ishmael and Isaac, where, you know, Ishmael would be called a wild man, Isaac was given the birthright? And it stems from there, and the jealousy between man has and we've seen the jealousy of man throughout the ages and the time in history that, like you just said, the prophecy of the Bible has come true. I mean, if you look at Matthew chapter 24, it says, "When the fig tree puts forth leaves, all these things will come to pass." And we know in the Bible, the fig tree is called Israel. And Israel became a nation in 1948. And we know a generation in the Bible is 70 to 100 years. Now, if you were to take 70 to 100 years from the year 1948, when Israel, poof, just became a nation again, which a lot of people don't recognize Israel. They say Israel doesn't exist. There's no such thing as the Middle East, blah, blah, blah. But, well, look, Israel does exist. It's a country. You can fly there. You can go there, go to Jerusalem. Israel's there. It's an actual country. But in the book of Matthew, it states, when the fig tree puts forth leaves again, all these things will come to pass. Wars, rumors of wars, do not be troubled. I don't have the full verse in front of me, but, we're seeing what's happening. Everything is centered around Israel. Everything in the Middle East today is centered around that tiny little country, that 12-mile stretch across Israel. We know foreign policy. The United States is concerned about Israel. Russia hates Israel. Iran hates Israel. Saudi Arabia hates Israel. Iraq hates Israel. And we know the 6-day war that ended on the 7th day. Very interesting. You had a 6-day war there where in every single Muslim country attacked Israel. And if you talk to people that fought in that war that are still alive today, you'd be astonished at their testimony. They would fire missiles at an Israeli tank, and poof, nothing would happen. You know, and the thing of it is, it's a miracle. And it's just like Moses. You know, the people refuse to believe. They refuse to believe the miracles of God. If Jesus Christ was to show up today and say, "I'm the Lord Jesus Christ. Here, I'm here to save you," what would we do to him? We'd probably lock him up in a prison and call him crazy. You know, and even if he chopped down a tree with one finger, we'd still deny it because none of us want to believe because we have no faith in the Lord Jesus. We have no faith whatsoever. But, Mr. Lewis, I do have callers that have been waiting a while here.
Yeah, right. And, there's one thing
before
I
we
would
get
like
to
to
some callers here, I've got a question here for you. Before I get to some callers. We talked about the Europeans coming over to America. This was addressed on the last show.
I have something prepared for that, and also the other question. But first, I'd like to point out that if you go to prophecies, I think it's 4th chapter of Isaiah, and the 19th, I believe, anyway, in Leviticus, several hundred years before Christ was born, the prophet said that the Israeli people would be chastised 2,520 years after they returned from Babylon. And that's 907,200 days. At the very end of that last day, Israel became a nation again, fulfilling that ancient prophecy.
Prophecy
that's
fulfilled.
Amazing.
You're absolutely right. And you're given dates and times, and people can go back and look that up if they choose to, instead of going on YouTube and worrying about what AOC says about Donald Trump, or you know what I mean. And that's very important. That is.
All right. Now about the Native Americans, can I go there?
Yeah. Let's go there real quick.
Okay. All right. Now the people of original people of Pennsylvania, I can't pronounce their name, but Lenape, Lenape of Pennsylvania. According to their legends mentioned in by William Penn in his autobiography, in which I verified by the tribe, by the way, I emailed them, and they said this is true. They originated in the Pacific Northwest. They fought their way east, destroying the mound builder civilization in the Mississippi Valley. They, quote, put out their campfires, is what they say, as they said, finally arriving on the East Coast, Atlantic coast. While the natives of the St. Lawrence River, Canada, have a written language that turned out to be similar to the Egyptian script, no Rosetta Stone would have been needed. They say they arrived from across the Great Ocean. Dr. Barry Fell, in his book America, B.C., established Phoenician voyages to the Americas before 1000 B.C., colonizing Brazil and the Mississippi River Basin. Temple inscriptions in New England in the Punic Iberian script. My hometown on Cape Cod has what they call a board stone with the message, "This land belongs to King Hanno of Carthage." The ancient Phoenicians had red skin, adorned with everything with beads and feathers. The word Phoenician means red-skinned. And the Greeks and Romans likely came west as well. So you see, the Europeans of our time, of Columbus and later, were not the first to come over and take a lot of the land. It happened in ancient times, both across the Bering Sea and also, of course, across the Atlantic. You know, they were not the first. The reason was
I'm waiting for someone to reconnect in that message being here on Facebook.
Yeah,
I want to connect her first, but I do have another caller here real quick, and hopefully she'll call back in. Let's take some questions here for Mr. Ken.
And I also have something about races, too. if and when you're interested.
All right. I've got someone that's been waiting 38 minutes. Oh, well,
yeah,
there's 251. 251, I know you just called back in. You're next after 321, okay?
Okay,
and you can ask a question here for Mr. Lewis, okay? So 321, and remember, you can ask a direct question, but if you're going to spew nonsense, I'm going to hang up very quickly, very quickly. So 321, and then 251 is next, okay? All right, 321, go ahead. If you have a question for Mr. Lewis, biblical scholar from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California, you're more than welcome to make a comment real quick or ask a question. Go ahead, 321.
Hello, Joe. This is Eugene. I'm down here in Titusville, Florida. Got a really good show tonight. I really appreciate it. I had a question about weightlifting. Do I really need to wear a weight belt?
We're not talking about weightlifting, sir. We have to stick to the subject here tonight.
I'm up to about 200
all right,
pounds.
You're off the air. You're off the air. Okay, you're off the air. Okay, you're off the air. You waited 38 minutes. You just went totally off topic. That's not what the show was about here tonight. Okay? This is not a platform where we're going to attack Joe Gibson, how many times Joe Gibson goes to the gym or stupid nonsense like that. You want to talk to Mr. Lewis, ask a biblical question, or even have a comment concerning what Mr. Lewis has had to spoke about here tonight. That's what we're going to do. Okay? All right, 251's been waiting, and she's a friend of mine, and she supports the podcast, and she may disagree with you, Mr. Lewis, but I'm sure she'll be very polite, and she'll ask, and if she has a question, I'm sure she'll ask a serious question. I know this phone number, so I'm going to connect her, and she is a friend of mine, and her and I may disagree sometimes on some things, but I know she's very well spoken, a very nice woman, and I want to say hello to her children. I watched your watch party on Facebook. I'm sorry I tuned in late last night, but that was you got a lot of positive energy, and you seem like a very delightful person, and that's a good thing. So I'm going to connect 251 right now. 251 from Mobile, Alabama. Hang on. There we go. There we go. There, I got her. I'm sorry, the call screen jumped up on me. Some other callers called in. Go ahead, 251.
Greetings, Joe Gibson. And is this C.S. Lewis?
No. He died about 300 years ago. No, this is Lewis Brackett.
Okay. Now I called in a little bit late, but I caught a little bit of the conversation, and I don't really agree 100%. I have to be honest and just go ahead and say that, and that's okay because we all have our different interpretations of what we read and how we read it, based on how we were taught to understand this particular doctrines, as far as religious doctrines and whatnot. But I wanted to talk about, I wanted to ask, okay, so a lot of people have issues with questioning God in certain situations, and I was just curious as to, are you familiar with the book of Habakkuk, and do you go into that book, and, is it understood in that book that Habakkuk questioned God and didn't necessarily agree with how God answered his questions?
Well, of course, Job had the same thing going on. He says, I've been a righteous guy. How come all this bad stuff is happening? And in my own life, I have to ask, okay, God, how come I had a cancer that almost killed me and I went through literal hell? Or how come, one of my pastor friends, his boy, his young man had a motorcycle accident and has been, almost paralyzed, and it took him 2 years to even begin to get better again. We live in a really bad, sinful world, and horrible things do happen to good people. You remember the point footprints, that God doesn't promise that that we won't have trouble, but he does say that he'll be right there to carry us through that and to help us and to comfort us in those periods of difficulty and trouble. We're very finite, people and beings that just have a very basic understanding, if that, of the omnipotent and the infinite God, and we're always learning. But what I've come through my life, and I'm now 71, and maybe I don't have that many more years to live, but I finally understood that I do the best I can, and Habakkuk and Job, and they did the best they could in their flesh, totally trusting on God the Father, for their eternity. And it's a basic, simple faith. In the Old Testament, the Old Testament, whether it was a Hebrew or a Gentile, they both were required, to trust in God and to follow certain things, like the trail of blood. From Adam and Eve, it was understood that in order to atone for their sins, that every generation and every family had to do a blood sacrifice, to put their sins on the altar of God. And when God finally came in the form of Christ used this MasterCard. I say you can't get to heaven by Visa, but you can by MasterCard, because Jesus' MasterCard paid it all. You see, does that help you a little bit? Hello?
Hello, Archivedi, still there?
Yes,
I'm still here.
That was a very in-depth explanation, and there are things that take place in our life that we can't explain all the time. We are placed in situations that are hard or tough from time to time. As far as cancers and how the body is attacked, how the mind is attacked. From what I understand, when basically from my own studies. We are transformed by the renewal of our mind. We are, no matter what road we come down, no matter what experiences we have, once we are ready to elevate in the mind, we must renew our mind, and that means changing the information that we are receiving or engaging in or allowing in. Sponges for all the information that we take in. So whether that information is negative or positive is how we receive. And really it's the transfer of negative energy to positive energy, which is from knowledge to wisdom. And so basically my point is here is that if we're not studying, if we're not reading, if we're not researching, not asking the question.
You're breaking up on me, Archivedi. You're breaking up. You're breaking up really bad.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now clearly, but you were going in and out. And I know you're trying to make a very interesting point here.
There's a major disturbance, so I'm not going to be able to say too much and be heard very clearly, and that's fine. But the point of the matter is the fact that we must renew ourselves, renew our minds through transformation. We are not to conform to the ways of this world, but we are to be transformed through the renewal of the mind. So whatever anybody is going through out there, whatever it is that you're going through, don't be afraid to question your circumstance. Don't be afraid to question and ask God, why is this happening to me? Because you may get an answer that is beneficial to your growth and development, meaning what you receive within your spirit will either confirm or deny what it is that you think is going on with you based on the questions that you ask. And it's so easy to just Google a question, Bible scriptures about love, Bible scriptures about wisdom, Bible scriptures about pain, Bible scriptures about overcoming, Bible scriptures about whatever it is that you have going on in your life. Be very specific about your questions and ask those questions. Google, any form of search engine that you want to use that search engine. Type in your specific question, not specific question, but, just ask for a scripture that is in accordance with whatever topic that you want answers for. And I guarantee you there's going to be multiple sites, multiple scriptures that pull up that will lead you to another scripture, that will lead you to another book in the Bible, that will lead you to so many different avenues of information that will get you through your own devastation. And so I just want to encourage anybody or everybody, listeners, no matter what you're going through, be encouraged today. Keep a smile on your face. Don't allow the enemy to steal that away from you. You have the power to control the way your energy goes. And so this is where we learn to operate the energy that we are exuding from within ourselves.
That's what I was
and
talking
this is what
about,
God gives us.
Actually, Archiveda, you brought up a very interesting point, actually. That's why I brought Mr. Lewis on the program to talk about energy. And I understand where you're coming from, but energy, what is energy in the, what is energy? Is energy a being or some? What does the Bible say about energy, Mr. Lewis? Can you answer that question? We talked about this privately.
From my point of view, it sounds like that this lady may be mixing the terminology of the New Age with the Bible of Christ. And the Bible doesn't really talk about energy, and I don't believe in the same way that she mentioned.
It doesn't.
And it's not an energy as much as a personal relationship with Christ, that He takes on Himself our sin, and He takes on Himself the burdens, and He helps us through these particular dark times we're living in. As I told Brother Joe here in San Diego and Imperial Beach, I feel like a lot of times this is where Satan's throne is. The darkness here, is incredible in some areas and some best. But in my humble opinion, it's not about a positive or negative energy. From a biblical standpoint, it's the Holy Spirit indwells the believer. It's, as Brother Peter has often said, it's about standing in state. Our standing as Bible-believing, born-again, Christian sealed with the Holy Spirit is eternal. Our state varies from day to day, whether or not we are tempted by a certain sin and we think about it a while, or whether or not we make a bad choice. Our standing in fellowship with God will vary from day to day.
And just real quick, who is God? What is God? Because a lot of people have a lot of questions. They say, well, why does God allow children to be murdered? They say children are saved by grace, and a child is automatically saved by grace. And Jesus even said, let's quote the Bible here, whoever shall hurt these little ones shall have no place in my Father's kingdom. But yet we have children being murdered through abortion, through the evil people out there. If children are saved by grace, why does God take these children after being born? I think a lot of mothers out there. I know the woman on the phone line tonight. She's a good mom, and she loves her children. She really does, and I think she's a good mom. And she cares about her children a great deal. But the thing of it is why does God allow these types of things to happen, Mr. Lewis?
I've been researching that, and I can answer the question, Brother Joe.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
God created mankind that because, He wanted His creation to love Him. But the problem is, in order to be able to love, you also have to have the option to refuse to love, to hate. In order to be allowed to do good, you also must be allowed to do evil. Okay.
And that right there is the contrast between the negative and the negative and positive energy. And I apologize for interrupting you, but that is negative energy and positive energy, good versus bad. And so the Bible does not speak of energy, but the true reality of who we are as beings, we are energy. We feel the energy swirling within our energy sources, which is our chakra system. This is the energy that causes us to take flight or to fight. This is that energy that causes us to speak or be quiet. And we can feel that rising within ourselves.
Okay, may I continue? Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, the thing is that every person has that choice. God does not send anyone to hell. People voluntarily choose to go there.
We're in hell right now.
Ma'am, because the point is that in order to have love, must also be the opportunity to have hate. To do good, you also must have the opportunity to do bad. We live in a fallen world caused by the disobedience of Adam and Eve. Adam had the keys to the world, and he chose to deny God, to fail God, and to give the keys to the world to Satan, who was the great deceiver, the great disruptor, and the author of all this evil. And by doing that, Satan is the one who is causing the disruption in this world, and when we have that, we have people who choose to kill little babies. We have people who choose to go out and murder, and God gave them that choice to love Him. He also gave them the free will choice to refuse Him. You see, and that's why we have the evil that we do. God could have created man as a robot, and He pushed man's buttons, and man would say, I love you, I love you. Would that be love? No. Because in order to love, you have also be able to hate. You see, and that's why we have the problems we do with little babies dying or people getting cancer. People get cancer because the second law of thermodynamics says there's increasing entropy, exponential increasing entropy all around us. So our genetic code is corrupted, starts getting corrupted from the moment we're born.
And Mr. Lewis, I just want to let you know we got a bunch of callers on the phone line here tonight.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, we got Mendelicon on the phone line, and he may have a question for you, but we can't give long speeches here, Mendelicon. I know you've been waiting a little bit while, but God's Rainbow Ministries was before you. This is an interesting conversation because we're talking about negative and positive energy, and we're talking about God and who the Creator is. And look, this is a very, very powerful discussion, and we have a lot of people on the phone line, and I know some of you probably can't get. I'm getting messages right now. I can't get through. Look, I'm sorry. I blame Blog Talk Radio for that. Don't blame me. Don't yell at me. It's not my fault. I'm not cutting you off. I got 336 also there, but first God's Rainbow Ministries, then 336, then Mendelicon. So let's go in order here. Let me do the right thing here as the moderator of the show. I don't know where my co-host is here tonight, Archiveda. I think you and I spoke about this privately, actually. Where's my co-host? I wonder where she is. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on with that? I wonder, because I'm a little upset about that, Archiveda. I really am. I'm a little upset. I think I'm going to talk to you privately about that. I'm really upset about that. What's going on with that?
We talk offline about that, right.
I think you know what I'm talking about.
It's just right now. We talking about Mr. Lewis just stated that the devil is the author of with this devastation that we in, and so and who's the author of? I mean, we could put all this. When we speak about religion and when we speak about the Bible and I'm going to say the characters in the Bible. When we speak of it, we tend to put a face on things because the pictures have been painted already. And so it's hard to differentiate what's what. And so all the questions of what color and what did it really look like and all this, we don't know. We can't answer those questions. Well, we really cannot answer those questions. We can paint a picture.
Not to interrupt you, but I think Mrs. Lewis did address that because Jesus –
right,
he
and I wanted to respond
to it. He was no
it.
color.
Right. Well, he said that he was like the Middle Eastern type color and wasn't really specific in how his facial features and things of that nature. And I do understand that. I agree with that. But here's the deal: we all come in so many different shades, from light to dark. Let me just say that, from light to dark. We come. Right. We are on a large scale, a sliding scale of shades from light to dark, and it's a beautiful thing. It is truly a beautiful thing, and so
God's creation is a beautiful thing. You're absolutely correct.
It truly is. If we look at the trees and the different flowers outside, and the different, like each flower has a different number of, each type of flower has a different number of petals and is shaped differently. Now, if all the flowers look just the same, we would probably be looking ridiculous, like Alice in Wonderland and the Queen painting all the white roses red.
I think, not to interrupt you, Archiveda, but I've got so many callers on the phone line here now that are waiting.
I'm not going to stay long and say anything much more, but only thing I want to say is that we just cause more confusion when we try to understand what is already not understandable. So instead of understanding the things that are easy to understand, as in the fact that we are energy and we move things as far as energy, and we can be moved as energy. When we begin to understand this, we'll let all those other questions go and we'll become into acceptance of who we truly are. And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Brother
Joe.
I have
a
little.
Mr.
Lewis, go ahead, because I got so many callers on the line here who want to ask you a question. Go ahead, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah,
go ahead, real quick.
About the first men. All native people have the story of Noah and the flood. From the tribes of Borneo to darkest Africa to the Amazon, all have the same story. Gilgamesh of Mesopotamia was the most famous extra-biblical story, but the ancient India text mentions it as well. All these stories vividly mentions a half-breed race of giants, Nephilim, children of human women and fallen angels. The Mediterranean gods Zeus, Hercules, Apollo were some of these Nephilim. It was to wipe out the giants that God sent the flood. However, Noah's son Ham's wife had a recessive Nephilim gene passed down through Ham's son Canaan. This is where the giants of Canaan came from that the Hebrews mostly wiped out. However, the gene has traveled to South America and the Pacific Oceania. And these people seem to that, you see.
No, I understand where you're coming from, but a lot of people don't understand the Bible like you do. And that's what we're trying to do here tonight.
Okay.
So
anyway,
let me get to God's Rainbow Ministries.
Old Testament, and most people in Christianity don't even go into the Old Testament, so they wouldn't even understand.
Yeah. All right. Archiveda, let's get to God's Rainbow Ministries. He does a blog talk radio show himself, and then I got 916 that's been waiting a long time, called in earlier, hung up, and then called back in. And then, of course, I got Mandela-Con on, and I got 336 that's been waiting here a little bit. So I'm going to try to get to everybody the best I can because, time permitting, I got to be the moderator of the show. But, like I said earlier, my finger is on the mute button quick. We're not going to attack each other. Archiveda didn't attack anybody. She has a different viewpoint, and she brought some positive things to the podcast and had a good dialogue with my guest here tonight. That's what we want to do. All right. So, God's Rainbow Ministries, you do your own podcast show also, so I want to bring you on, 210. You always allow me on your show, so welcome, God's Rainbow Ministries.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction there, Joe. You got a very interesting topic tonight, okay? And as far as our bodies are concerned, we are energy because if you think about electronic impulses that goes on in our brain, okay, that sends signals throughout our body, okay, that's energy, okay, and so that's the physical part of it, okay. Now the spiritual side of energy is our soul, okay. Our soul is like a light. You see step into the light, and in the Bible it says step into the light. Okay, that's the soul. Okay. So, like I said, very interesting topic tonight. Very creative. Okay, and is that the pastor from San Diego?
Yeah, Mr. Lewis. He's not a pastor actually, but he's well studied. I like to call him a biblical scholar, and But thank you, God's Rainbow Ministries. And real quick before I get to my next caller, before I get to MandelaCon here, and then I've got 336-235 waiting on the line. I just want real quick, go ahead and promote your show real quick. I want you to do that because you always give me time to do that on your podcast. And I thank you as a fellow podcaster to come on to my podcast. So go ahead and promote your show real quick.
Over and over again so they can hear the beep on them.
Okay. All right. Well, you can find me at Blog Talk /.com at God's Rainbow Ministries, and I'm going to be having a show right after this episode of yours, Joe. So at 8:00 Central Standard Time, which would be 9:00 your time. So you're welcome to come on that if you want to, Joe. So like I said, I'd like to see people come and for an hour and a half of godly music and godly talk, which is Purpose Gospel Radio on God's Rainbow Ministry presents Purpose Gospel Radio. So I hope to see you all there, and have a blessed night.
Well, thank you, God's Rainbow Ministries. Thank you, Pastor Ken. I appreciate Pastor Ken from God's Rainbow Ministries. I'm gonna mute you with your permission, of course, but hopefully you'll continue listening in the chat room until you start your show. And that's great. We need to unite as Blog Talk Radio show hosts and come together and bring the message. But tonight, my guest is Mr. Lewis from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California. And
Joe.
Go ahead, Mr. Lewis. I'm sorry. We got so many callers on the line tonight, Mr. Lewis. You don't understand what I'm looking at right now.
Right, that's fine. I wanted to give a shameless plug to my website, if I could. It's www.lewishb.tv. It's LEWIS, H as in Harry, B as in boy, .TV, like the TV tube you watch every day. And I got all my books. So in fact, I just finally professionally published author too with some of my books. But anyway, they're all listed there, and a whole bunch of stories and some gospel stuff there too. So I know it'll really bless you, especially if you're a history crazy person like I am. Anyway, let's
all right,
go to the
very
next
good. All right, Mr. Lewis, I've got so many callers I need to get to. And ask Mr. Lewis a question. If you want to make a quick comment, you can. I know MandelaCon here has been waiting a long time, and I do appreciate his support of the podcast. And this is a little different platform here tonight with a different guest from what we've been doing for the past couple of weeks. So I'm going to bring it on MandelaCon, and then 336, you'll be next to ask a question to Mr. Lewis. Go ahead, Mandela Khan. I'm going to give you a couple minutes here to ask a question if you like. Go ahead.
All right, man. I have to put on many hats. One of the hats I wear is the spiritual advisor of the low and high order of the Africanist Persuasionist Church from time to time. When you go to your usual format of the Bible, country, Constitution, I have to take that spiritual hat because I could be quite political.
All right, no, we can't have any words like that on the show. I promised my guests we've got to talk without using any type of cuss words or anything like that, Mandela Khan. Okay, so please just ask a question tonight. I know you're usually a guest on this podcast, but tonight we have to do a different type of platform. Okay, so please just you can make your comment real quick and your question, but we got to talk. I have a Christian brother here who will be very highly offended if we say anything that's out of order or that according to his Bible and our Bible that he and I worship. So please, I'm just asking you as a friend, okay?
Okay, on the truth on behalf of the Creator, your outstanding alarm is unsubstantiated. First of all, the selective amnesia that you and your guests have when you come in with this thing of King James. I sent you some documentation in your inbox of the Ethiopian Coptic Church, the original Bible. Of course, you went straight to King James and you used that as your itinerary. That's okay, but that's selective amnesia. Now, for those who say that God allowed children to get killed, God allowed slavery, that's a lie, a blatant lie. And I cannot allow that to go without me putting in the public record that it's the evils of men. And the way I break this down in the energy is that if you take away, divide, and separate, you're evil. It doesn't matter what color you are. But if you add and multiply and bring the people together and live and let live in one love, then you're great. My question to your guest in this topic, since you and him, y'all masters of prophecy, how could it be that King James, you can go to Psalm 48 words down, the word shake, 48 words up from the last sentence is spear. I'm telling you that here is a secret insignia that King James and King James' lover was William Shakespeare. That's well documented in recorded history. So I'm saying that to say there's no way that me and my people can have the same relationship with this divine intelligence, because your divine intelligence has authorized war, rape, pillaging, and plundering. It has authorized setting up a Ponzi scheme of monopoly to where social control is through this religious order, which is really not what we call spiritual guidance. And I heard them say, since I am the voodoo child in 666, I want to put that on the table clear. The ancient mystery system that this King James Bible is talking about reject, that's exactly and precisely what I bring to the table. So I'm going to leave it right there because I know it's more deeper than what you guys want to go, because you go only back so far, just a few thousand years, and you think that this is where it all started, just like you think that the world created now under the United States of America. This is the best example under the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights. The same people that authorized King James are the same people that authorized the United States of America being the forerunner as it relates to religion. And remind you, there are other religions. And you notice I don't go against just Christians. But the Hebrew Israelites, Moors, Muslims, and Christians, with the Bible, Torah, and Quran, it is all mind control. It has nothing to do with the Creator. So no divine intelligence is authorized in this race.
So Mandela Khan, so do you have a particular question for Mr. Lewis? So who is the Creator in your eyes? Who is the Creator?
We've already discussed that. I have discussed it, and I'll put it in English form. The universe spit out the sun, the moon, the stars, total triple darkness. The uterus spit out all men on the planet Earth, the uterus. So when you look at Mother Earth, when you look at Mother Nature, ladies first, then you are just omitting what was already before.
So Mandela, so what you're trying to say is there's no Father in heaven, there's no Father, and the Mother Earth is the creator of all men. Is that what you're trying to say?
I am saying exactly that there's balance. Yin, yang, up, down, hot, cold, man, woman.
Okay, all right, that was my question. Now, Mr. Lewis, would you like to address that? Hang on, I'm in Delicon. Now allow Mr. Lewis to address that. And then I've got 336-235, and I recognize that number, and I'm trying to I know there's a lot of callers on the phone line here. 916, I see you. 909, I see you. You'll get a chance to ask Mr. Lewis as a guest here a question. But, Mr. Lewis, can you address real quick, and about time permitting, of course, can you address why Mother Earth is not the creator of all men and women on the earth today?
Because that is the ancient Babylon mystery religion recreated by, for modern consumption, just like, Constance Cumby was saying in her book, The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. It's just ancient paganism revisited, is all it really is. That's what the pagans were saying in Babylon, in Assyria, in Egypt, and then in Rome. It's exactly the same thing. And the Bible is diametrically opposed to all of that. And the supernatural authenticators prove that the Bible is true and that God is who he says he is. And no other faith, no other religion has that. So I stand on the Bible, on the Word of God, and on the authenticators of the Word of God manifested in the Word of God. Okay?
All right. Okay. All right. Real quick here, we got a lot of callers here, Mandelicon. I've got a lot of callers. I promised 336 next, and then 916 has been waiting a long time, called in earlier. I see the phone number. I'm scrolling down the numbers here. So 336, go ahead. You're next. Go ahead, 336. You're unmuted. Go ahead. All right, 336. I don't know if you can hear me. You've been waiting a while, I know. All right, 336 maybe had something to say. I'm not sure. All right, 336. I'll get back to you. 336-235. 916. Go ahead, 916. You got a question for Mr. Lewis here tonight. Go ahead.
Yes, Gibson. I love the show. My name is Jason Mitchell. I'm from Virginia. I am the Grand Dragon from the chapter of Virginia, and I want to say that your show is particularly interesting today. Finally, a show where us white brothers can come here and talk about white brotherhood and talk about.
All right. No, that's not what we're talking about. And Mr. Jason Mitchell, you say you're the Grand Dragon. Okay, all right. I'll mute you there, Mr. Grand Dragon. Thank you, Mr. Grand Dragon from Virginia, for listening for so long and wanting to get on the phone line. Oh boy, that's not what the show is about tonight.
So why are you mad at him? Why are you mad at him? You believe the same thing you do.
All right, 909. Go ahead. Do you have a question for Mr. Lewis? I'm sorry, Mr. Lewis. This is what I get on this show. But go ahead, 909. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Lewis, you're talking about Nephilism. Now, was that to destroy the giants? Is that what that was created? And please
no. If you look in Genesis now, for some reason I'm having a senior moment. I can't remember exactly what chapter it is, but it said, "Now the sons of God, the only sons of God were Adam and the angels, because everyone else was sons of Adam." You see, sons of God are those that were directly created by God. And Adam was the only man that was ever created directly by God. So you have the sons of God, the angelic host. They said they went into the daughters of men, and the offspring of them were great men of renown, what we call the Nephilim, the hybrid human and angelic DNA, or demonic DNA. And the whole purpose of Satan at that time was to so corrupt the human DNA that Christ could never come. So that's why God told, Joshua and the children of Israel to totally wipe out all the people of the land of Canaan, because they were all demonically corrupted, and they did not want the Hebrews to also become demonically corrupted. And they also wiped out some of the other people around for the very same reason. And they had also experimented with animals, and that's why all the animals were killed as well. So it was just like the flood of Noah's day. It was to purify the land and cleanse the land of this demonic corruption.
Oh, that's good. That's what I wanted to hear. I've heard about the Book of Enoch, and I was very interested in that. Mm-hmm. And I've heard these stories about the giants that they've discovered and everything, and just like I'm blown away.
Okay, yeah, sure. And the thing is that there was a race of giants in southern South America. The very southern tip of South America. There were giants in the Oceania. In fact, even in the late 19th century, there's still giants there.
So they could have been some on Easter Island.
Yeah. Well, Easter Island, or especially in New Zealand, they found skeletons of the giants over 15 feet tall in New Zealand. They're very recent. But the whole point is that the flood of Noah and the wiping out of the people of the land was to try at least to eliminate as much of the genetic corruption in the land as possible. That's why it says of Noah, he was the only one left. He and his family were the only one left that were perfect in his generations, meaning he was the only one left whose genes were still uncorrupted. That's what it means when it says he was perfect in his generations.
But Mr. Lewis,
thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome, sir. I appreciate your phone call, 909, and you asked a very interesting question, and thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm not going to unmute you because you've been very polite, and
thank you.
So I see 251 that still wants to get back on here, but I've got a few other callers here I got to get to, and then I want Mr. Lewis to wrap up the show, and we'll give closing thoughts to everyone like I usually do on this podcast. But Mr. Lewis, of course, will get I'm going to give him the final word of the podcast here as time wraps up on the podcast. Area code 210. Go ahead. 210. And my finger's on the mute button quick. Okay. Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead. Do you have a question? All right, you apparently don't have a question. All right, 336, go ahead. Do you have a question for Mr. Lewis? Go ahead, 336. All right, possibly not. All right, you guys got to be quick because I got so many people on the phone line here tonight. Private caller. And remember, my finger's on the mute button very quickly. Private caller, go ahead.
Hello, Joseph, and hello, Mr. Lewis and everyone on the panel. I'm listening to the show, and I'm really pleased with some things, but I'm actually offended at some of the comments made by Mr. Lewis, who says that he feels like he's living in a hell.
All right. Goodbye. You have nothing interesting to say. Oh, boy. Let me tell you. Oh, Lord.
Hey,
that's what we get here on this podcast. These people don't. And I want to give an announcement to the people in the chat room also before I give Mr. Lewis some final thoughts and allow people to have some final thoughts here. In 251, I'll bring you back on. I'm starting up a new Facebook group page, actually, and I'm working with computer techs and a lot of people from around the country and around the world. And social media is a big thing right now in this country. where we attack Donald Trump and he's a racist, and we attack each other. What we're going to be doing is exposing your individual profiles, okay? And we're going to find out who you really are and post your personal information, which is lawful, by the way, lawful on the internet. And we're going to expose you. That's what we're going to do. I'm working on that group as we speak, and it's a group it's going to be called Citizens Boycott, and we're going to give everyone a voice on the group, but we're also going to expose these trolls that come on this show and other shows. I've been getting death threats on my cell phone. That's great. Well, my sheriff's department already knows who you are, and we're just waiting for you to call back. And the ones that want to say I posted an ad on Craigslist saying I'm selling Lionel Richie tickets and junk like that, we're coming for you. Don't worry. You got to remember something. The government works in its own time, and we're coming for you. You're going to get a good knock on the door one day. And, and we talk about this law. We're a country of laws. And if you don't like the laws of this country, you don't like the Constitution, like Donald Trump said in North Carolina last night, you can get out. There are jet planes that leave this country every single day, and we'll even pay for it. One-way ticket out, okay? Simple as that. We're not playing games with people anymore. All right? So I just want to let you know that. But we are very popular on Blog Talk Radio. We've got hundreds of callers on the phone line here, and I'm scanning just through the numbers here, and we're going to get to a couple more people here, and then I'm going to give Mr. Lewis some final thoughts, and then Mandela Khan, I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to have your say also. But I want Mr. Lewis, my guest. I promise to treat him with respect tonight, and we're not going to tolerate nonsense. We're not going to tolerate bad language. We're not going to threaten anybody. We're not going to do that on this show. We're not going to do that anymore. And I'm coming after you people in the chat room also. And what's his name there in the chat room there that likes to that's mouthing off there? Chris from MCALI. Chris, I already you're not even, your real name's not even Chris. Okay. That's a fake, phony profile. I know where you live. I have your phone number, and my local sheriff's department will be contacting you very soon, okay? So you just keep right up doing what you're doing. Just keep it right up. You're just gathering evidence. You got to remember that. Just keep it right up. Keep it up with your threats. Go right ahead, okay? Okay, Chris? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. I had to address that there. I get so many idiots on here on the podcast that just don't understand. They just don't get it. That they're being monitored. They're being watched. I mean, they just don't understand. They don't understand the New World Order. They don't understand technology today. A lot of people on the computer should not be using the computer. But I'm working with a lot of people, and we're cleaning up the show and the podcast. And we're here talking about the Bible here tonight. And Mr. Lewis is a biblical scholar. He's calling in, spending his time with me tonight on understanding the times in which we're living today. And that is what is important. All right. 917, let's see here. 917, you've been waiting. Actually, 323 was before you. Do you have a question for Mr. Lewis? Have you been listening to the podcast? Or otherwise, I'm just going to hang up on you. 323. Oh, well, there you go. You just jumped up my board here 3 places. Hang on. There you go. There you are. 323. Do you have a question for Mr. Lewis?
Yes. Are you a fan of Lionel Richie?
Okay, all right, goodbye. Oh, all right. Let me scroll down some more numbers here. No, we're not tolerating that nonsense. Let's see here. All right, that caller already called in. 336, I don't know what happened to you. I don't know where you went. I got 3 336s. All right, we got 26 minutes left. Mr. Lewis, I want to give you 10 minutes to wrap up the podcast, and then I'm going to give everyone else some closing thoughts. Mr. Lewis, go ahead. Just from what you heard here tonight, obviously we are broken as a country, aren't we? We are broken.
Well, you know,
we're in a war between good and evil.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we do, Mr. Lewis? How do we combat this together as a people?
Well, we've been hoping that there'll be one last great revival before Christ comes, but in a way we may be seeing a little bit of that, but still just about all Christians in this country are listening to those that say that it's somehow immoral for people to go out and vote, and for Christians to go out and vote, and for Christians to be involved. They say that Christians should stay in our churches and wait for the bad people to come to get us, you know. And I remind people that's what all the good people did in Nazi Germany, you know, back in that day. Well, they didn't come for me, you know. They went for the Jews, or they went for the trade unionists. I'm not one of them. Well, eventually they came for them, you know. And the Christian who doesn't vote, the Christian who doesn't get involved, how come all this nonsense is in your schools about all this gay nonsense? Because no one went to the school board, you know, meetings and said, "What are you doing?" And no one insisted that the teachers who think that their mission in life is to corrupt the minds of young children, how come they're allowed to teach in the public schools? Where are the parents? You know, that's the number one issue. You complain a little bit in your neighborhood, but what do you do about it? You know, Christians are supposed to be the light of the world. Where's your light? Do you hide it under a bushel? That seems to be the thing, you know. There's a gay pride parade here in San Diego that at least tens of thousands, if not more. How come there are not tens of thousands of Bible-believing Christians out there, you know, every time there's a gay pride parade to protest it? They're all hiding in their churches. They're afraid to get involved, you know. Or how come, you know, the evil is going on, you know, in your local government? How come, you know, you're not there pounding on their doors and on their desks every single time they do something wrong? It's the fault of the believing Christian and the Jewish person as well that's not standing up for righteousness. That's why this country's gone to hell, you know. The decent people are allowing the evil people to do whatever they want, you know. And it's like, you know, in the time of Joshua and thereabouts, he says, after the time of Joshua, every man did what was right in his own eyes. They didn't care about righteousness. They did what they wanted, and finally God's judgment came. Now, with President Trump, we may have one final chance. But still, you know, if people sit on their tails in their offices or in their homes and don't get out and get involved and preach righteousness and do righteousness and treat people.
And Mr. Lewis, real quick, not to interrupt your closing thought, but I want you to tell people what you told me, how you're out there every single day handing out tracts, trying to win people over to good. Trying to wake people up. Talk about that, please.
Okay. You know, I live just a couple blocks east of the southeastmost city of the United States, Imperial Beach. For many years, this was the meth capital of California, and the demonic powers here are incredibly strong. We as a church have gone out and put a tract on every door of every car in this whole community, and only one or two people briefly showed up. You know, we have a house church, a biblical house church. It's not we rent, you know, a storefront, literally, down by the beach. Can we get people to come by from the community? No, they don't care. They don't want to hear the gospel. And with the few that have come by, they see we do the King James Bible, and they're out the door. You know, they want what is corrupt and what makes them feel good. You know, I was forced out of my last church because the Rick Warren nonsense had got a hold of everybody, and I had to say goodbye to my friends. You know, only two people of the whole church have ever called me since I was forced out. The darkness here. You know, there's a couple of books called this present darkness and piercing the darkness, and is so apt for California and much of the Western world. That the people that are believers, I mean, you know, you tell people, and once in a while they'll polite and they'll take a tract, but the only person, you know, we have our telephone number on every single tract we give out. Do you know the only people that have ever called are those that are cussing us out because we left a tract on their car, or in one instances, some tracts were found in a parking lot, so the parking lot operator said, "What in the world are you leaving that trash in my parking lot for?" You know, totally demonic. You know, and
you need me out there, because I'll tell you what, I'll call them right now on this radio podcast. I'll call them back. What are you talking about? You know how I am. I'll tell them like it is, you know. And look, and that's the problem. A lot of people, like you just said, Mr. Lewis, are not standing up for what is right, are not fighting, or, you know, whether or not we agree or to disagree to agree on what is right or what's wrong. The problem is, like you said, we have a spiritual war in this country right now. We have a war amongst the people. Everyone's so worried about Donald Trump saying, "Go back, get out of this country." You know, you see it on the corporate news media. You see it. You know, we're too busy watching the gladiator games. You know, the women's soccer team, the girl with the purple hair. We're too busy paying attention to the nonsense instead of paying attention to what's going on in our individual communities. But you know what? Me, 3,000 miles away from you, I'll tell you what, I take it to people on social media. And a lot of people have become friends of mine that I've met that I even disagree with. But you know what? They like me because I say what I mean and mean what I say. And I think that's why a lot of people tune into this podcast, because they know that, look, I mean what I say and say what I mean. And I'm not afraid to stand up for what's right. And you know what? Sometimes I may be wrong. But the fact of the matter is we need to come together as a people. We need to heal our country. And right now we're in a great division. We're in a disgusting division right now in this country. And look, we can argue that you know, Jesus was a black man, Jesus was a white man. You know, that's not the real picture of Jesus. You know, men wrote that Bible, men wrote that thing. You know, we can argue all day long. But but the fact of the matter is there's only one positive and there's one negative. There's no in between, okay? There's only a positive and negative. When you start your car in the morning, your car battery, the look on your car battery, there's a positive and a negative that starts that car. Simple as that. Yeah, there's a lot of other components involved, but there's only a positive and negative. And until we all realize and come together as one people together, we can heal this country. And like you just said earlier, you made a very interesting point. You know, that we can heal this. God gives us free will. Our Creator gives us free will to make the right decision. But a lot of us make the wrong decision. And we're too busy attacking each other on individual opinions instead of examining the facts. You know, and we all know that because we look, whether we can argue with people that say, look, I believe in the Black Panthers, I believe in the Ethiopian Empire, I believe Jesus Christ. But there's one thing that we all recognize together is that we're all one people together, and even if we talk about this as a country, we're one nation under what? Our Creator. Our Constitution says we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness together. But we're in a spiritual war right now. We're in a social media war. You should see the messages I get in the chat room. I mean, they're just filthy, disgusting. I mean, how disgusting and vile some of these people really are. But you know what you got to do when you deal with those people? You expose them. You convict them. You convict them of their wrongdoing. You expose them. Well, Facebook's going to turn you off. Facebook ain't going to shut me down because I know the law better than any of you out there. I studied it. Don't you play games with me. Don't you threaten me. And I get phone calls, cell phone conference messages. I talked about this on previous shows. You heard the idiot saying, I sell Lionel Richie tickets on Craigslist. I get death threats. I'll leave the porch light on for you. Any of you devils want to come by? Because you know what? I know what I believe in is right, and my Creator is going to protect me. And you know what? If it's my time to go, because, look, I survived 2 murder attempts in my life already, and it wasn't my time. But when my Creator says it's time to go, okay, it's okay by me. Because if I'm wrong and my Lord, and what I believe in is a lie, guess what? I go to the ground, and that's it. Big deal. Try to come knock me down. Try it. I've been on this podcast since 2014. Okay? I'm not afraid of any of you devils out there, any of you negative people out there. I will take you on any time of the day. That's why I brought Mr. Lewis on to this podcast. Where's my co-host tonight? Where is she? Okay? Where is she tonight? I sent her a message saying I was going to do a show tonight. Where is she? I need to hear from you, co-host. Where are you? Because otherwise, you know what? I got nothing for you. I got nothing. All right? Until you wake up. And that's right. I see Mandelcon called in, my friend from Facebook. He and I go at it so many times. We argue with each other, but you know what? We're friends. We love each other as human beings together because we have one common goal. We have goodness in our hearts. We're trying to wake people up. Now, I understand the message may be wrong, that the message we're trying to bring, but we all know that, look, life is too short. We need to cherish this life. And like you said earlier, Mr. Lewis, Adam and Eve made the mistake. They lived in paradise, and they made the mistake because they were greedy, because they made their own decision instead of worshiping something higher than them. And understanding that there was something better than them that created them. And that's the problem with us today. None of you get that. None of you get that. And trust me, when you're on your deathbed, you get cancer, you get sick. When you're getting ready to die, you're not worried about your electric bill, are you? You're not worried about your chrome tires on your Corvette. You're not worried about the hood scoop on your Mustang. You ain't worried about that when you're on your deathbed. You're crying out, oh, God. Oh, my God. Who's your God? Who is your God? Who is your Creator? And that's the problem with a lot of you people out there. And the thing of it is, we're all worried about Republican, Democrat. We all know they're criminals. They're criminals. We know that. But I got to say one thing about Donald Trump. He's the first president since JFK. And we know what happened to JFK. The evil ones killed him. Okay? They killed him. The driver turned around and put a bullet in his head and finished him off. Simple as that. That's a fact. Watch these superhero films. Watch it. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump really does speak his mind. Look, I don't agree with Donald Trump all the time. I know he's the president of the United States District Corporation. I understand we've fallen from our way from the founders of this country. I understand before the founders of this country what happened, and the people that came here, they took away the rights of some of the people that were here, and the people that were originally here took away the rights of the people that were here before them. Look, we can argue about that all day long, but we need to understand the times in which we live in today. That's what I'm trying to say to all of you people, and you just don't get it. Instead, you want to post perverted nonsense in my chat room. You want to attack me on Facebook, attack me on this show, call into this show, wait 48 minutes to attack my guest. All right? Shame on you. Shame on you. Mr. Lewis, go ahead. I'll give you a few more minutes. Go ahead, brother.
Okay, yeah. One of the things I also wanted to address is so many people that are so bent out of shape about skin color. Adam had the genes for all the skin colors that are today, and so did Noah. And the thing is, I think that it's probably that the people with the black skin from Africa were genetically selected because that's what worked best in Africa. And the people with white skin, that was genetically selected because the white skin worked best, in the high north. and then the Middle East, and the Japanese, whatever worked best in that era was what is genetically selected. So I believe that's why there are various skin colors. But originally, Adam and Eve and Noah all had the genes for whatever skin colors, that would be needed. So all this paranoia and this hate because someone's a different skin color, come on. It's absolute nonsense. And that's I see so much of that all over the place, and racial pride. Come on, there's only one race, the human race. And from a Christian point of view, that's one of the most important things we can say. Jesus said to love our neighbor. We might not like them. I've had neighbors that are a real problem, but still, we're not supposed to hate them. We're supposed to do good to them. So that's most of the Christian message. Jesus says, what did Jesus say was the most important commandment? He says, love one another. Was his most important commandment. So.
Amen. You're absolutely right, Mr. Lewis.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct, and that was the most important commandment. Whether or not you believe who Jesus was, or whether or not we all know Jesus walked this earth, you're absolutely right. That was the most important commandment. And also go out and preach the gospel to all the world. Right. You're absolutely correct. I see 251, and she's back on, and maybe she wants to give a couple minutes here. We got 10 minutes left. So 251, I'm going to connect 251 one more time. That was very important what you just said, Mr. Lewis. And I think that's the message you're trying to bring here. And, we could debate history all we want, but we need to understand the times in which we live in today, and we're in trouble. We're in big trouble as a human race. We really are, and we need to really wake up.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead.
Oh, I just have one more question for Mr. Lewis there. Would you agree that a certain group of people are promoting a Potemkin world to steer people away from God so that they can control those people?
Well, yes. The New Age group, the New World Order group, they're well, as I said in my opening remarks, they want their little gods of Darwin, Freud, and Marx to say that humanity and people are not important, that they're just cattle, that they kill anytime they want to, and it's not a crime. That's what the New World Order people are all about: massive population reduction. So that they can be kings and priests and only have enough people left to serve them. And they have their own religion, the Gaia Mother Earth religion. You're the only. Every one of you is a little god. Can you imagine the confusion if you have everybody on Earth thinking that they're God? I mean, good grief.
Yeah, I see what your point. That's a good way of putting it. And living here in California, with this being a sanctuary state, I can see how that can be more controlled too.
Yeah. So.
Okay, all right. I want to bring 251 back on. We got 8 minutes left before I got to wrap up the show. I'll try to get to many people as I. Yep. Go ahead, ma'am.
Out of many, one. This is Mr. Douglas's wife. I just wanted to say that to join hands with you. E pluribus unum. Out of many, one.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, 251, go ahead. 251, a friend of the show. I got to bring her back on. Go ahead.
Thank you. I accidentally hung up and had to call back in, but that's my fat cheeks. But anyway, it's been a very interesting conversation, and the topic, of course, is a controversial one at best. Whenever we're talking about religion, and then whenever the color of our skin gets pulled into the conversation, it just goes to show just how lost we still are, as far as where we are. And we're still following doctrine that was put into place just for the New World Order. So, I do agree with that part of Mr. Lewis's last comment there.
and it makes sense to where we are today, based on the historical facts of, the writing of the Bible and all that stuff. So I'm not going to go into that. Point of the matter is, in my opinion, there's source power, there's all power, where all energy comes from, and we are, okay, so let me say like this. You got one brain in your head, but you have multiple electrons, neutrons, and protons, the 666, right? And we have, just like Mr. Lewis stated in his comments earlier, the electrical sparks that go off in our brain that create other electrical reactions within our body. And so he does attest to the fact that he agrees with the fact that we are electrical beings, because there's no way that we are not electrical beings. What I do want to add to the table is how we eat as electrical beings. We need to be eating electrical foods, and this is what's going to cause us to decalcify our bodies and to heal our bodies, so we can therefore transfer or transform our minds with information. We can't receive anything if there's a blockage. So once we clear the blockage throughout our entire system of a body, then we can begin to elevate and ascend higher in our mind and our thinking, and we can get out of the old ways of thinking and into some new ways, which is where we need to be. There's been a shift. We are not on the old paradigm anymore. The new paradigm is based on the energy that we are, and we need to be feeding that energy. Not only that, we need to stop giving that energy away, and not giving it away and feeding it is going to cause empowerment within each individual person. And so once each individual person gets on their own elevation and ascension, their own deprogramming, reprogramming system of new information, when you're able to open up your mind to receive something new, we won't be stuck on the same communication anymore. So that's the time frame I'm looking forward to, and I'm going to keep on speaking what I speak. I'm going to keep on studying what I'm studying, and I'm going to keep on presenting new information as it comes to me. Joe, I thank you for always allowing me on your show to speak and to be heard. I appreciate all the guests and all the listeners. Mr. Lewis, it has been an awesome time communicating with you or conversing with you on this topic, and I appreciate your thoughts on the matter. I'm done. Thank you.
Before you go, Mr. Lewis, before we wrap up the show, give out your website again real quick before we wrap up the show. So people can get in contact with you and converse with you, and maybe
yes, I
you
am
can
on
meet
the
new
phone.
people.
Okay, yeah, at the top of one of my web sheets is one of my email addresses. But anyway, my website again, www.lewishb.tv. It's LEWIS, H as in Harry, B as in boy, .TV, like the television set, .TV. Anyway, and it's been a pleasure, talking to all of you, and especially your brother Joe. And I hope somehow we've been able to help a few people out there, and it's always a blessing. I was a Sunday school teacher for been over 30 years now, so doing a Sunday school lesson every day, and I don't get to do it as much anymore because, as I said in the message, I was forced out of my church because I objected to the Rick Warren heresy. And that's something, if you have it in your church, you better get out of the church. Otherwise it's just too late. Don't stay there like most of my friends
Mr. Lewis, also, you're from Imperial Beach, San Diego, California. You're a very kind and loving person. And Mr. Lewis, he'll take your contact him via email. He'll converse with you if you got questions. You want to talk to him. He just gave out his website to everyone. Talk to him. Talk to him.
Hey, we're all like that, Joseph, here in California.
Yep.
We're all like that out here in California. We are nice people. We just got a jacked up government. That's all.
Well, we got a lot to cover on this podcast, future podcasts, and like Archiveda just said, it was an interesting podcast. I'm glad she listened and contributed. I want to say hello to her daughters out there. that are also probably listening. And, of course, Brother Lewis, I got to wrap up the podcast, Brother Lewis, but you gave out your website. And contact Brother Lewis. You know, I mean, we're all brothers and sisters out there, and we need to stay in contact with each other. And that's what this show is about, connecting with people, using this information age that they call it, to come together maybe and have a dialogue with each other. Even if we disagree with each other, we can come together and we can learn from each other. And like Mr. Lewis did say, you know, we need to heal our country, and God does give us that great opportunity. We have free will. You know, and that's what's so important. But I got to wrap up the show. Brother Lewis, thank you so much for joining me, being a guest here tonight, and hopefully you'll connect with new people on the podcast, and they'll go to your website and check you out, and email them and talk to them. You know what? Brother Lewis is not a bad guy at all. I've spoken to him privately on the phone several times over the years. Not a bad guy, you know, and that's what this show is all about, connecting people together. And that is what is so important.
Nobody have
So I
bad
got to
guys
end
on
the
your show?
podcast. Excuse me? All right, yeah, I got to go. I got to wrap up the show, everybody.